We've heard about the crisis of drug deaths in the UK. 5 years in a row, record increases in drug deaths. That's one part of the crisis. But the crisis is broader than even that. I'm sure everyone here is aware of the term county lines. Is everyone aware of that? Everyone see regular newspaper stories? It's the topic of the hour, isn't it? But can anyone suggest to me who's to blame for county lines? I mean, the question never seems to come up in the newspapers. How exactly have we got to the position in about 6 years where the front line of drug dealing in this country is by children? That's how quickly it's happened. So is anyone to blame? Me? Yes, someone said the police. No, well, I'm to blame, and people like me, but I'll explain what I mean by that. This is my fault. So I used to work undercover, so my job was catching drug dealers for a living, and I used to go particularly after heroin and crack cocaine dealers. So I would travel around the country, I would embed myself into an inner city area. It would normally take me about 6 or 7 months to do so. And I would do this by, generally quite quickly I worked out that if I could look like and fit in with people who were really struggling on the streets, people who were homeless or living in squats or that kind of community, then that's where I would have the best connections. So what I would do is I would look for the most vulnerable person or vulnerable people, because from an undercover cop's point of view, vulnerable people are much easier to manipulate. It's true. It's basic truth of undercover policing. But also, in terms of heroin and crack cocaine use, the most vulnerable people are using more drugs than anyone else. So they have more connections. They could introduce me to more gangsters. So I would get to know people, I would befriend them, I would give them gifts, I would spin them a yarn that I was a travelling shoplifter. Sometimes I'd actually go shoplifting with them, which was amazing fun. It really is. If you've got the get out of free jail card and you know you're not going to prison, it's really good fun, shoplifting. So anyway, I digress. It's not a hobby now I'm retired, I promise you. So I would befriend people and I would really embed myself into those communities. And in order to manipulate them, I was on a constant journey of learning about these people who I went into the police with a very judgmental approach. I saw these people who had a moral failing, they'd made the wrong decision and didn't have the willpower to get out of that situation. That's how harshly I viewed these people. But in order to successfully infiltrate them, I had to learn about them and empathise. So what I call it now, weaponizing empathy, because that seems to be the phrase that fits. But of course I learned that most of the people I was coming into contact with were dealing with some kind of childhood trauma. And eventually I got that conversation out of them and this became apparent. Of course, the academic evidence backs that up completely, but I was learning this for myself. So one operation I went to, in fact, I'd just given up undercover work at this point. I'd given up. I said, I cannot handle this anymore. Because in an operation in Nottingham, the person that I'd befriended for 6 months, he also got arrested because he was committing offences on bail. He was dealing heroin on bail. And when he got arrested, as I was told afterwards, he ended up in the police cells on minute-to-minute watch, suicide watch. And as he told the interviewing officers, the reason for that is because he thought I was his one friend in the world. This is someone who had a difficult childhood, and he thought he'd finally found someone he could really confide in. And of course, I was very good at getting people to confide in me. That was my skills. So when I heard that he'd become suicidal as a result of my actions, it was very difficult for me to deal with, and I gave up. But 2 weeks later, I got the phone call, and the DS arranging these operations said, "Woodsy, we need you to do this job, because these gangsters are even worse than the last lot. They're a team called the Burger Bar Boys, which you might have heard of. They're a very infamous organised crime group from the West Midlands. And as he told me, the police intelligence quite clearly showed that they were using gang rape as tactic, as reputation building, so that it was clear that they were the scariest gang around. Now, what they'd done is they'd taken over the drug supply in Northampton. And the reason that they'd managed to do that is because Northampton police had fantastic success arresting all of their local heroin dealers. So in that gap in the market, the Burger Bar boys came in from Birmingham and took over in a much more brutal fashion than the previous dealers. So, because these gangsters were raping and maiming people, that's why I got sent into Northampton. And so I spent weeks manipulating someone to introduce me, and I'll never forget the day I was eventually taken to meet the Burger Bar boys. I was taken to their temporary headquarters, which was a snooker club in the centre of town. And on the way there, my companion was trying to get me to learn a new cover story. He says, look, if they meet, I've got to tell them that I've known you for years so that they trust you. Which is really strange when you're trying to remember your own cover story and someone's trying to teach you another one. It's very confusing. But anyway, we got to this snooker club and we got directed into the gents' toilets. As soon as I got in there, the door burst open and this hooded figure came in, went into the toilet, stood on the toilet and looked over the cubicle and said, what's this? As soon as he said that, the door burst open again and 4 more hooded figures came in and they were surrounding me, walking around me slowly. And he was asking me questions and then asking my friend questions. And then every so often one of them would headbutt me or push me over and the other one would headbutt me on the side of the ear. And, as I'm trying to concentrate on the questions, I'm beginning to think I'm not getting out of here in one piece because I knew the reputation of these people. I mean, they left people in a mess as part of their reputation building. One of them was implicated in 7 different murders in Birmingham. So I knew what they were capable of. Anyway, it seemed like it went on for hours, but I suspect it was a little less than 15 minutes. And eventually he looked down and said, all right then, what do you want? So I said, I'll have 1 and 1, please, which was £20 of heroin and £20 worth of crack. I gave him my £40. And then I was into that gang. I got his phone number and it meant I could start gathering evidence of conspiracy against the gang. Because there were 6 Burger Bar boys running the whole network in Northampton, and they roped in all of the other people. So it took me 7 months in total, but at the end of that 7 months, I know I had evidence against every single person involved in the drug supply in Northampton, every single person. I know that because there were no new phone numbers to get. There were no new people to meet, no new names I hadn't already met. So I thought, right, we're ready to go. We can mop up here. 5 different police forces, provided staff for that. It was a huge operation. And about a week afterwards, I spoke to the intelligence officer who looked after that operation, and he says, yep, we managed to shut down the heroin and crack cocaine supply in Northampton for 2 whole hours. 2 hours. 7 months of work, my life in danger several occasions. I'd been stripped at gunpoint at one point during that operation. 7 months of work. 96 people were arrested. There was evidence against 96 people. 2 hours later, there was a new phone number on the streets. And you can picture the scene, actually. The rival gang of the Burger Bar boys are called the Johnson crew. And you can imagine the Johnson crew hearing about the police raids, thinking, oh, wow, boys, put the phone number in, get some extra stock in, we're going to make a killing this next few weeks. So there's something drastically wrong there, isn't there? All of those resources to shut something down for 2 hours. Which brings me to county lines. You see, the first time I bought heroin or crack, the first time I bought crack, the dealer said to me, you take care now, don't get yourself arrested. He was quite a nice chap, quite considerate. But he went to jail and he heard about the police tactics. And so everyone knew about the police tactics. Because the war on drugs is an arms race. The police are actually really, really good at catching drug dealers. Really good at it. I've worked with some incredibly skilled people developing new covert policing techniques all the time. If you were to give the police twice as much resources, they'll catch twice as many drug dealers. But all you do when you arrest the drug dealer is create an opportunity for 2 more. And as police intelligence will constantly tell you, that opportunity means an increase in violence. But it also means a development of the tactic, and that's where county lines comes in. Because when I arrested those Burger Bar boys, those 6 gangsters from Birmingham, those adults were dealing themselves. They were hands-on. They were carrying the drugs, they were transporting the drugs, they were transporting the cash, and they got caught. The use of children is the perfect strategic response to my success. It's the natural response to police tactics. So the use of children, this is what success looks like. And there is only one way we can protect those children. Some estimates are saying 20,000 children now are involved in county lines drug dealing. And most police sources are saying this is going to get worse. And think about this. If you rescue 20 kids from a county lines network, that means 20 more are going to get recruited. That means you're just meaning that there's more children qualified and have the experience to do it. How bad does the crisis have to be before we change direction? The only way to protect those children is to regulate the drug markets. Now, I would normally tell you about corruption, but hopefully someone will ask a question about corruption when we come up to questions. So thank you very much for listening.